Hey guys, welcome to week 2 of YQatHome. I hope you had a great first week and are ready for another. I have a few announcements before we get going. First off, if you're planning on coming to our retreats in May, registration is open, so head on over to our website and snag that early bird rate before March 2nd. It ends at midnight. Second, if you're not already following us on social or signed up for our newsletter, make sure to do that. We're going to be releasing more and more details about the retreats in May, and we want you guys to be as informed as possible. Last but not least, I am so excited to announce our all-Canadian guest list for YQ 2022. Get ready to hear concerts from Johan, Not Clyde, Coleman Williams, and Blessing, and to sing along with Tequila Worship and Briarcrest Worship over the weekends. We can't wait to see you there.
Sometimes on this journey, I get lost in my mistakes. What looks to me like weakness is a canvas for your strength. And my story isn't over, my story's just begun. Failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. No, failure won't define me, 'cause that's what my Father does. Ooh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. And arrival's not the end game, the journey's where you are. You never wanted perfect, you just wanted my heart. And the story isn't over if the story isn't good. And failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Hey, failure's never final when the Father's in the room. Oh, so lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house. Prodigals come home, the helpless find hope, 'cause love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Prison doors fling wide, the dead come to life, singing love is on the move when the Father's in the room. Miracles take place now, the cynical find faith. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Jericho's walls are quaking, strongholds now are shaking. Love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Yeah, love is breaking through when the Father's in the room. Oh, lay your burdens down. Ooh, here in the Father's house. Check your shame at the door, it ain't welcome anymore. Ooh, you're in the Father's house.
You know we all make mistakes. And sometimes we make these little mistakes that have these big consequences. Now, I might be old now and I cut my hair off, but I still skateboard to work. And this past fall, I was skateboarding home. I had something else on my mind. I was going a little fast because I was a little bit late, and my left foot clipped my back wheel, and my skateboard went sideways. Now, my skateboard stopped, but my body kept going, and I landed on my forehead and on my shoulder on the sidewalk and just dragged along for a little while. Now, luckily, helmets in my family are non-negotiable. I told you my dad's story last week. And so my helmet was on and I was safe, but I still looked down on a minivan, saw 3 of it, and it was dancing around. And I thought I should probably sit here for a few minutes. So I called my wife, she came and got me. Everything was all right. I missed like 3 days of events and work because I couldn't move the left side of my body. Sometimes we make these little mistakes and they have big consequences. When's the last time you made a little mistake, but it had big consequences for you?
One time I accidentally put my debit card in my pocket instead of my wallet, and then it slid out and I couldn't find it for a really long time.
I forgot to shoulder check on my road test, and the consequence was that I failed my road test.
We were dirt biking through a cornfield. They had a path, and I went on the wrong side, and I had a head-on collision with one of my buddies, injuring myself pretty severely.
I didn't study for a test, and then in result of that, I did not get a good mark.
Now, one of the most famous mistakes in all of the Bible is right at the very beginning. You probably know the story about Adam and Eve. God creates the entire universe, plants this garden, runs this giant river into it. It's blossoming like crazy. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna make a man. So he gets some dust together, forms this man, he breathes into the nostrils. He places Adam in this garden, says, hey man, this is all yours. Here's just one thing though. Don't eat from that one tree. Eat from anything you want, but not that one tree. It's kind of like Christmas time when your parents come home and you know they've got Christmas presents hiding away. They say, stay downstairs. And then you come up a little while later and they're like, hey, you can play in the whole house, but don't go in that one closet. And you're like, I must get into that closet. Anyway, God gets to know Adam and he's like, this dude's gonna need some help. So he makes a whole bunch of wild animals. He's like, hey Adam, why don't you get to know these animals? They might be your helpers and you can maybe name them. So I imagine at this point, Adam's hanging out with the animals and he's like, hey, monkey, hey, monkey. That's a good name for you. Hey, pass me that banana. Or he's like, where did that little turtley little shelly thing go? Did you see where that oh, let's call him Turtle. Write that down, Turtle. All of a sudden is startled. And he's like, where did you come from, you zebra? Ooh, this referee looking dude, let's call him Zebra. Monkey. Write that down. And at this point, God's like, we're gonna need something different. Let's go back to the drawing board a little bit. He puts Adam to sleep, steals the rib, gets some other ingredients. All of a sudden, a woman arrives. Adam wakes up and is like, at last, this one is like me. Well, a little different, but it's more like me. So Adam and Eve get to know each other, and they are shameless. Garth Brooks has a great song called Shameless, and it describes these two exactly. No clothes, they didn't care, in this garden, naming more animals. One day, the sneaky little snake comes along and talks to Eve and is like, did God really say you can't eat anything here? She's like, no, he didn't say that. He said we couldn't eat from that tree. We can eat anything we want in here except for that tree. And he's like, you know why God doesn't want you to eat from that tree? It's because then you would know everything. You'd be just like him. Don't you want to know more? And she's like, I would like to know more things. Yeah, why don't I do that? Let's take a bite. He's like, surely you're not gonna die. Just take a bite. So she takes a bite. And she's like, Adam, hey, you want to know some things? And he's like, yeah, sure. All of a sudden, they are filled with shame. They realize they're naked. They hide from God, and God's like, what's going on here? Why are you guys all of a sudden dressed? Who told you were naked? He was like, you ate from the tree. And God kicked them out. And they lost this beautiful paradise where they fully belonged, where they were accepted because of this mistake that they made, and the consequences were huge. Sometimes the consequences for our mistakes impact our reputation. They impact how other people see us, what other people think of us. What would you say your reputation is? How would other people describe you?
I think I'm described in 3 words: cute, lovable, and funny.
I would hope other people describe me as polite. I always try to come off as polite, but sometimes I come off as too blunt.
I think other people would describe me as straight out of a Hallmark movie.
People have said I'm pretty spunky. I have to redo that.
People would describe me as aggressive. I can kind of shove people around.
Lots of people have said that I have been really respectful and I'm kind to others and I'm always there for others.
Sometimes that reputation that we have makes us think that we'll never be allowed back in God's family. And other times we look at other people and think their reputation means they'll never be allowed in God's family. When I was in grade 10, I'd cleaned up my act, my behavior was better, I really felt like I belonged in God's family. But I looked over at my buddy and I was like, he knows better and he's doing bad things, and someone should tell him that he's gonna end up in hell if he doesn't clean up his act. So I invited him to KFC, where the chicken is fried, maybe symbolic of where I thought he was gonna go. And I sit him down and we have this conversation and I tell him what I'm thinking and my concern for him. And he basically said, okay, I get it. You've done your part. You can feel better now. And I was like, what? He knew I wasn't actually concerned about him. He knew that I thought I was better than him and that I thought I should tell him so. He knew that I thought he shouldn't be allowed into the Father's house because of the way he was acting. And what ended up happening when I tried to talk to him about his mistakes is that I ended up making the mistake that Jesus talks about in Luke 15. In Luke 15, Jesus has been teaching about a lot of things, and there's quite a few people following him. And verse 1 says, tax collectors and other notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. These were sketchy dudes in this society who had reputations, who were making mistakes, who people judged. Verse 2 says, this made the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law complain that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. So the churchy people in this culture were coming at Jesus saying, why are you even talking to these people, let alone having a meal with them when they don't belong with you? They don't belong with us. Do you know what they do is their job? Do you know the sins that they've committed? And Jesus at this point is like, I imagine he's fighting back an eye roll and he's going, okay, you're not getting it. Let me tell you a story and maybe you'll get it this way. And he proceeds to tell this story about the 99 sheep. He says this. It says, if a man has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what will he do? Won't he leave the 99 others in the wilderness and go search for the one that's lost until he finds it? And these dudes were probably like, yeah, absolutely. We hear about lost sheep all the time. This is a pretty normal scenario. And Jesus carries on and says, and when he has found it, he will joyfully carry it home on his shoulders. When he arrives, he'll call together his friends and neighbors saying, rejoice with me because I have found my lost sheep. And I imagine these guys again were like, yeah, we go to sheep return parties all the time. If I had $1 for the amount of sheep homecoming parties I go to, I would be a rich man. I get it, Jesus. When a sheep is lost, we leave the herd, we go get the sheep, we bring them back, we get our friends together, we throw a party. We know this, we live this here. And he says in verse 7, in the same way, there is more joy in heaven over one lost sinner who repents and returns to God than the 99 others who are righteous and haven't strayed away. And he's saying to these churchy guys, look, these lost friends of mine who you are offended that I'm even talking to belong in the family. My Father loves them too. And these sketchy dudes with this reputation and all these sins that you know of, they belong with me just as much as you do. And that is what I'm here to do. In another passage, he says, the healthy don't need a doctor. I have come for the sick. I have come for those who need me. I have come for those who are lost and who are broken. Because the home that I'm creating, the home that my Father has for all of these people is a home for everyone. No matter what their mistakes might be, no matter what consequences they've lived through, no matter what they're doing in their present, no matter what they've done in their past, everyone is welcome in this home if they love me and if they follow my commands and if they try to live like I've been living. They belong. They will be accepted. And these guys weren't getting it. These churchy guys were on their high horse, ready to take these guys to KFC. And at that point, Jesus steps in and tries to explain to them how wrong they are, and the sin in their life is starting to show. Back at KFC, it was so easy for me to think that my buddy was too far gone, that my buddy was not gonna be accepted back in to God's family. And then I read a passage like this and I realize Jesus came for all of us. That love he offers is equal to everybody. And I was wrong. And actually the sin in my life showed up a fair bit on my high horse, judging him, thinking that I'm somehow better than him. That was a big problem. So this matters for those of us who don't feel like we're part of the churchy crowd. Because no matter what you've done in your past, no matter what you're doing in your present, this gift of a home, this gift of love, this gift of a relationship with Jesus Christ is offered to you the same as anyone who's been at church their entire life. So if you were willing to say yes to Jesus' invitation to love him, to live like him, and to follow him, well, then the door is open. This home is for you. And this matters to those of us in the churchy crowd too. Because this home, this relationship that Jesus gives us, is not exclusive to us. And any one of our friends who is making mistakes and living the way that they want, whenever they turn and would come back to Jesus, that door is open to them. And when one of those friends does that, the party that heaven throws is incredible. So let's not live with judgment in our lives. Let's not look down on our friends who are making the same mistakes that you and I know that we make. Let's work our best to look like Jesus and to live like Jesus and to extend our family's invitation to those who desperately need it. So this week, what can you change to be more loving to people who are not like you?
When I usually try to learn how to love someone different than me, I try to look at life from their point of view, see, why they are different than me, and kind of celebrate that,
Just don't look at them differently.
Just being around them and like being kind and being nice to them and knowing that like I'm not gonna like be mean or anything, because the Bible calls us to love like everybody, like no matter what.
I don't know, just by showing them that I do care about their differences and that just because they are different than me doesn't mean that they're unlovable.